Hello, welcome to KaiCreative. My name is Kai Song, and today we're looking at these three full-frame mirrorless Canon camera systems: the original Canon EOS R, the Canon R6, and the Canon R5. What are the differences between them? What are the pros and cons? And which one should you consider getting, and why? So I asked you guys a couple of weeks ago what you wanted to see for my next set of review videos in a poll on my YouTube community page, and this was by far the most popular request. Over 60% of you wanted a Canon R5 versus R6 versus R video, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, make sure that you do hit that little notification bell so that you can vote on the next set of polls and see more of the content that you want to see on this channel. Now, cameras are usually defined by the size of their sensor, and the R series, although all full frame, are a funny mix of different pixel sizes. The Canon R5 has a whopping 45 megapixel sensor, the original Canon R has a 30 megapixel sensor, and the R6 dips down to a 20 megapixel sensor. But can you actually tell the difference? Well, if I was to slide three very similar photos up on the screen side by side, could you tell which one comes from which camera sensor? Well, let's play a little guessing game and see if you can spot which one is from the 20, 30 and 45 megapixel sensors before it's displayed on the screen. So unless you were watching that from a 4K screen on your PC or Mac, it would probably be quite hard to discern which picture was the higher resolution image and which one were from the sensors with less pixels. And unless your images are going to be viewed on ultra-fine, ultra-wide monitors or blown up to large print sizes, the difference won't necessarily be immediately discernible. And here is a good place to add that if you haven't done so already, don't forget to add yourself to the KaiCreative Facebook and Instagram feeds, where you can stay up to date with all of our photography sessions, video productions, short films, camera reviews, and other creative happenings. One of the benefits of actually having less pixels on your sensor is that you can have bigger pixels on your sensor. And what that means is that your pixels can retain more light, and that essentially means that you have a larger signal to noise ratio, the noise coming from the operation of the sensor, and therefore you get a larger expandable maximum ISO. And for our ISO values, the Canon R has 100 to 40,000 ISO, expandable up to 102,400. The Canon R5 ISO range is from 100 to 51,200, expandable up to 102,400. And the Canon R6 has an even larger ISO range, going from 100 up to 102,400, expandable up to 204,800. Again, this highlights those larger pixels, allowing more light retention on your sensor. Now, when it comes to dynamic range, the DxOMark.com scores the R5 as having a highly responsive sensor with a dynamic range of 14.6 EV. The R6 is down at 14.3 EV and is noted as having a good response, while the R is down at 13.5 EV. And one notable point from the DxOMark.com about the R is that its low light ISO capability results are among the best for a Canon sensor, but this is with regard to older Canon technology, so this would be pre-R5, pre-R6 Canon cameras. Very quickly looking at the top menus of the Canon R, the R6 and the R5. And straight away you will notice that the original Canon EOS R has a top LCD screen, and so does the R5. The R6, however, has this dial here where you can switch your modes, and this is very nostalgic if you're coming from some of the other Canon cameras. Some of the other differences are the glide pad. This has been replaced with a joystick at the top here on the R6, as well as a joystick here on the Canon R5. Most of the button placement is similar, so your on and off switches are all in the same place, your record button is the same place, you've got your shutter button, your scroll wheel, all of these are in the same place with subtle differences between them. Each one of these cameras feels like a well-built, well-manufactured piece of camera equipment in your hands. Canon's looked very carefully at some of the things that people weren't happy with with the R, and they've presented two options in the form of the R6 and the R5 that correct a lot of those problems. Another thing that people didn't necessarily like as much was having the scroll wheel removed from the original 5D series, and what they've done with the R5 and with the R6 is put those scroll wheels back on. So if you're coming from the 5D Mark III or 4, this again will be something that's very familiar to you. So that's comparing the three bodies just ergonomically side by side. They all feel very robust, they all feel very sturdy and solid, definitely well made, manufactured pieces of camera equipment. When it comes to focus points, the Canon R has 143 autofocus points, while the Canon R6 and R5 both have 1053 autofocus points. I also found that the R5 and R6 were a lot quicker in getting focus and tracking on the eyes and face of a subject, and this is probably just down to the newer technology, but also having the Digic X processor, while the R uses the older Digic 8 processor. Moving on to continuous shooting, the Canon R shoots at 8 frames per second, while the R6 and R5 both have continuous shooting rates of up to 20 frames per second, and again with the advanced face and eye tracking, most of those shots, if not all of those shots, are going to be in focus. One of the redeeming features of the older Canon R is the battery life. The EOS R squeezes slightly more juice out of your standard LP E6N battery at 370 shots, while the R6 comes in second in just under 360 shots, leaving the R5 trailing behind at 320 shots. For storage, the Canon R has a single SD card slot, which many working professionals are not comfortable with. The R5 offers dual card slots, one standard SD and one for the newer CF Express cards, which can be quite expensive. And the Canon R6 is a good go-between for the original R and R5, as it has dual SD card slots. Now, another area where these cameras differ greatly is in the video offering. So what filming capabilities do you get with these Canon mirrorless cameras? Well, for the Canon EOS R, you can film 60 frames per second at 1080 and 4K at up to 30 frames per second, but that 4K is cropped by a factor of 1.7 times, which can really restrict its usability in smaller spaces. But dual pixel autofocus does work in 4K on the EOS R as well as on the R5 and R6 too. And also you can use all eye compression on the original R, which you can't currently on the R6. Also, the R was the first prosumer camera that incorporated C-Log as standard. That's to say 8-bit internal with 420 color subsampling, but with the option to shoot 10-bit 422 video externally to something like an Atmos Ninja 5. Moving on to the Canon R6, you can film 120 frames per second at 1080, which is awesome for your B-roll. For 4K, you can film at up to 60 frames per second with a much smaller crop than the R at 1.07 times, which is fantastic, but you can only film video currently with IPB compression. Now, I don't know whether Canon will correct this later on with a software drop. We will have to wait and see. When it comes to C-Log filming capabilities, you get 10-bit 422 internal video as standard on the R6, which is awesome. No need for external recorders here. Moving on to the R5, and this is where video really shines. A lot of content creators have jumped onto the R5 because of the video offering, and straight away, the R5 allows you to shoot 4K with no crop, and you have the option to film in 4KU, that's Ultra HD, that's 3840 by 2160, or 4KD, or DCI 4K, which is 4096 by 2160, and you can film 120 frames per second at 1080 and 4K, and with all eye compression. On top of that, you have the 8K filming option at up to 30 frames per second, and you also have the option for RAW filming, or 10-bit 422 C-Log, or HDR PQ. So you really do have a plethora of filming options with the R5, but just bear in mind for those larger aspect ratios and higher frame rates, you will need to use the CF Express cards for your recordings, and also remember that the camera overheats in these modes, so you currently get around 20 to 30 minutes of recording time before the overheating warning comes up and you have to let the camera cool down. Another noticeable point that stands out from the newer R5 and R6 models is the introduction of IBIS, in-body image stabilization, something that the original R doesn't have. And this functionality really is useful for run and gun scenarios where you can quickly shoot handheld videos, you don't have time for gimbals, and if you pair this with some glass that has image stabilization, you can get some really great smooth handheld shots. Another factor that's going to affect your decision making will invariably be the cost. And this is another area where the EOS R has an advantage, of course, being an older model. The R is currently selling for $1,800 brand new on the Canon US store, £1,700 on the UK store, and in the second-hand marketplace I've seen them sell for around $800 to £1,200, about $1,000 to $1,500 in the United States, depending on the condition and any accessories you might get. The R5 is set at around $3,900 brand new on the Canon store, £4,300 on the UK store, and second hand for around $3,000 to $3,500, about £3,000 to £3,500 in the UK. Not much shift in the price there, as there aren't too many second hand units just yet. And the R6 is slightly more affordable, brand new at $2,500 or £2,600 in the Canon stores, and second hand I've seen them sell for around $2,000 and also about £2,000. Again, not too many second-hand units floating around on the internet. So who should get the Canon EOS R? Well, maybe someone making the jump from DSLR cameras or from the crop frame mirrorless cameras like the M series. It only has that one card slot, as we mentioned before, which is the main concern for working photographers. For filmmakers, you do have that 4K filming capability. You get 1080p at 60 frames per second and 8-bit C-Log on there as standard, with the option to film 10-bit externally. Thanks to its successors, it's slowly coming down in price, making it more accessible to a larger audience. And of course, you have the adapter allowing you to use older EF lenses while you make the expensive leap to RF glass. Many people also seem to be throwing their older EOS R models onto eBay in favor of the newer models, so it is possible to pick up a second-hand unit for a decent price. So who should get the R6 and why? Well, the R6 is a good go-between for the R and R5. It has dual slots to keep the pro photographers happy. It has 4K at 60 frames per second to keep the videographers happy. Its price point is steep for some, but certainly more manageable for those doing it for work or serious hobbyists. The R6 is good for someone that maybe has a 5D Mark III or 4 and is looking to upgrade to a full-frame mirrorless for their work and needs those dual card slots. And even though it's got a 20 megapixel sensor, really, the difference is not going to be seen unless you're looking to create massive posters or banners. So finally, who should get the R5? Well, definitely seasoned professionals, those who want the massive 45 megapixel sensor and the video capabilities to match. But also remember that you will need a machine that has the capabilities to deal with that functionality. There's no point getting this camera for the 4K 120 frames per second and 8K filming capabilities and then trying to edit on an old potato. Also, the price point of this camera is a big investment for many, and it's not just the price of the unit itself, but also you need to consider the additional cost of the CF Express cards and also the cost in memory. If you're looking to expand to 4 or 8K filming, that's going to require a lot more backup space, so you're going to want to invest in extra storage to the tune of several terabytes, if not more. It's all just extra stuff you need to think about. So what do you guys think? Which one of these cameras are you looking to get a hold of and why? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. As always, if you found today's video useful, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And also, if you haven't done so already, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that little bell for notifications. So that's it from me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. All that's left to say is stay creative, stay safe, imagine, implement, and inspire. And I'll see you next time on KaiCreative.